Hey, everyone, thank you so much for being here today. We have a smaller group, but this should be a lot of fun. So please, I hope you feel free to join the conversation anytime there's a break. We'd love your input along the way. If there's any questions, you can go down to the bottom. You can either write it in the chat or raise your hand. Either way. But today, I really think this is a great follow-up to the Pyramid of Identity. We're going to be talking about belief change. And specifically, we're going to use the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief to guide someone along the way. This is really powerful. And this actually came from a conversation that David and I were having. A friend of his talked about the concept, and then he and I started talking. And we really like that it's a rational progression. So, if you take someone, you can hit them at the identity level, and then with the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance, you can pace and lead them along the way. One of the other, I'll say, for lack of a better term, built-in elements of it is that as you're guiding them from the different state, you have fractionation built in, and it allows you to take them even deeper. So we're allowing some more people to come in here. Sorry about that. Uh, but anyway, hopefully that gives you an overview of what we'll be talking about. Uh, David Barron, would you like to take it away now?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to, I'm not entirely sure how long this will take. It's a relatively easy concept, but to understand and to apply, but it really sort of shocked me how easy it was and how dramatic it is, and I've actually applied it. So the origin of this is I was watching a friend of mine do a podcast. His name is Chase Hughes, and he mentioned in this podcast how you can really change someone's mind just by walking them through the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. You know, you and those 5 stages are simply first denial, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, ultimately acceptance. And he didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it really got me thinking. And so um, what you will notice is if you go to my website, mindcontrolpublishing.com, there's an article there. It's the first article that's there. It's called, let me take a look here. It's called Grief as Leverage. And there I describe the process. If you go ahead and read the article, it describes it very well. But at the bottom, there is a document that I allow you to download. It's about 9 pages. This document is Joe put it together based on our discussion, and it's an incredibly good dissection of how to use the 5 stages of grief for influence. So let's recap what the 5 stages of grief are first, and then we'll talk about how to use it in my experience in using it. 5 stages of grief. This came about by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross as she worked with people who are dying. And she presents them as stages, but that's a little too simplistic. We'll get into that. The 5 stages of grief are first denial. So think of hearing the worst possible news ever. The first thing you want to do is not believe it. The second stage is anger, where you are angry at the world or whatever as you face this information. Third stage is bargaining, where in the case of if you're faced with your mortality, you bargain with God, you bargain with doctors, you bargain with anyone you can to overcome this. Following bargaining is depression. And then ultimately, the end stage of the 5 stages is acceptance. Now, it's easy to understand why this might be a progression, but in reality, with grief, it is very muddled. You go from one stage to another and back and forth and back and forth. Hopefully, you get to the end of acceptance and you find a sense of peace. What was pointed out in this discussion that Chase Hughes was having on the podcast is that if you just use this as a model and you talk people through it, at the end they become susceptible for your to your instructions. And so all you have to do is first talk about something that gets them angry, then or talk about something in which they don't believe it's true. They're challenging themselves. So that they get them in the denial stage first, or facing that, then get them angry, start them thinking about bargaining, and then things that about depression, and then ultimately about acceptance. Okay, so if you read the article that I wrote on this, I set a model in my mind of how to work with someone who, I just use the example of a smoker because I deal with a lot of smokers. And what, well, let's talk about why it works so well. It goes back to the concept of fractionation. Typically in hypnotic fractionation, you're going from one state to another. So for example, a waking state to a deeply relaxed state, back and forth, back and forth. This is similar to that, but you're not going just from two states. You're going through a whole cycle of emotional state to one to another. And going through that loosens up your suggestibility. What you'll find is if you watch TikTok videos, and these are these short, stupid that will that grab your attention. And you know, the first video, you may see some relatively attractive person doing a dance, and then the next video you see a cute cat video. The third video is you find something that just makes you angry, and the next video is something that shocks you, and then something incredibly sad, and then they show you an advertisement, and you become very susceptible to that. Someone, I think it was Chase Hughes, who said that he had to quit watching these things because his wife kept saying, "Why are you buying all this crap?" And he realized it's all because I've been watching it on TikTok, and so he just decided to quit using TikTok. So understanding that's why it works, I created just a model of how to use this conversationally with a smoker, and I have done it both conversationally before the hypnosis session. I've done it in the hypnosis session. It works perfectly well in both of those, and I have gotten some very, very positive results. So we're going to use it in the steps that are mentioned here. It starts off by simply talking about the denial phase. For a smoker, it's the moment when they realize, I've always been able to tell myself I could quit smoking, and I realize I'm stuck. I don't believe it. I got this far. I can't get out. And so you talk about this. You talk about, you know, when did you realize you've been lying to yourself all this time and you can't? And you start to have them sort of face that, confront that part of themselves. That really introduces doubt safely. The next part is anger, and anger for cigarette smokers is really easy. First of all, you can be angry at yourself from getting stuck like this. You can be angry at a habit that you can't control. You can be angry at an industry that tries to sell you freedom and only gets you into slavery. You know, think about if you've ever seen the picture of the Marlboro Man. He's in his early 60s. He's in a nursing home with the breathing tube around here, and he's got emphysema, and he says, you know, I've seen this video, and he talks about smoking is killing me. You know, I should not be this unhealthy. That's worth being angry about. Once you talk about this anger, and you can spend as much time in any one of these as you want, then you talk about the bargaining phase. And the bargaining phase for a smoker is often, I'll quit tomorrow. I can quit anytime, or I'm not ready to quit right yet, but I'm going to. And then, or I'll slow down. I'll just slow down. But even as you go through this, you're trying to negotiate your way out of it, and still you're somewhat stuck. Ultimately, you land to the next phase, which is the depression, which is you have gotten yourself into this so deeply, you're resorting to talking to a hypnotist. This has to be, this has to be incredibly humbling to do that. And as you talk about the hypnosis, or rather the acceptance phase, the phrase, the sentence that I came up with is, ultimately, when you go through all of this, being ping pong from one emotion to the other, your very last and your very best decision is to decide you are just going to quit. You're just going to give it up. It is done. This is not you anymore. And when you accept that, it gets a lot easier. That is often how I'll just talk about it before the hypnosis session. And then I do the hypnosis session, and I pretty much do the very same thing. I wrote it down there in the article. It goes very much like this, and it works very well. You could read it just from the article. Something happens when you reach the realization about you and this habit of smoking. First, you don't want to believe it's true. You remember to yourself, I can quit any time. And then when you try, you realize you've been trapped all along. You're right to be angry at yourself for getting stuck in this deadly habit, angry at the habit that turned you into a slave, and angry at a whole industry that works endlessly, promising you freedom and selling you into slavery. Then the bargaining comes. At this point, you try to negotiate your way out of it. You tell yourself first, I'll quit tomorrow, or it's not that bad, or you say that you can still quit, but you're just not in the right state of mind. You do it, and then you'll do it when your situation is better. These are all ways that you bargain with yourself, but in the end, you're stuck. So at some point, you realize this all seems hopeless and that you can't do it. Now we go to the acceptance phase. Your very last and your very best decision is just to accept the fact that you can just quit. You have to quit. You will quit. Accept it. You are done with the lies and the excuses that you tell yourself. You are done with the roller coaster ride. The time is right now to stop this habit. Stop smoking and never go back. And so that is the little sort of written dialogue I have. And I have, so I've tested this out. I've done it in conversation with quitting smoking before, and I get absolutely no objection during it. And I've done it in the hypnosis session. And of course, I do a lot of things in the hypnosis sessions, but it's always had it certainly has contributed to a really, really strong outcome, helping them quit smoking. This is just a model now. So what I'd like you to consider doing is think of the other ways that you can lead people through this, and do that. And again, you can spend as much time lingering inside these emotions so that they really begin to feel them. And every time you switch from one emotion to another emotion, it loosens up their suggestibility. So at this point, I want to make sure I've described this adequately. And do you have any questions? Anyone? Joe, you're welcome to comment.
David, one of the things prior to this, if I heard someone and let's say they're already in the anger stages for quitting smoking, and they're angry because, oh, my nagging wife, she wants me to quit, says she can't do it. Prior to this, that would have been a sign that that's probably a client I wouldn't take because there's it's almost guaranteed for failure. They're
Mm-hmm.
not quitting for themselves. But the way you're leading them, I think this would have the value because you're leading them along the way to where this, I think, would have value and you're not fighting with the person
Yeah.
like you could in other circumstances. What do you say on that?
Yeah. Uh, it's very likely if they're talking to someone who's there to help them quit smoking, they're feeling at least one of these emotions, one of these states. You can talk about that. You can bring any of them in, and keep in mind the whole stages of grief aren't stages. They're more like things you flow through, and you can have several of them at once and then go from one to another and back again. It's a much more of a process than it is a whole set of stages. So yeah, start with where they're at, and we can go and use it in that way. Justin, you have your hand up. What kind of question do you have?
Yes, thank you, David. Is my voice intelligible?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. So my question is just regarding a brief synopsis, succinctly, over the outline of the process just aforementioned. I was on my phone while I was listening. I am at the beach. I'm in my car. I was listening. And if you could just give me a brief recap and a summary, to the best of your words, your ability, as to the bottom line of everything just discussed. I was very
Sure.
unconscious of it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Keep in mind this is going to be videotaped and it's going to be up on YouTube, so you listen to it then, but I'm happy to recap. Uh, if you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief, these are written up by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I'm trying to think. I forget the book she wrote it in, but they are denial. That's usually the first. Anger, bargaining, depression, then acceptance. All you have to do is talk about these emotions and bring these emotions up in conversation. You don't have to make the person feel these feelings so that they're emoting or angry or anything like that, but just bring them up. And ultimately, at the end, when you reach acceptance, you can present the state of mind, the decision that they want. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, Justin.
Yes, it makes 100% sense. Thank you for that
Okay.
summary. I understand it'll be reavailable on YouTube, and thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, good.
And also, Justin, I don't know if you heard in the beginning, if you go to Mind Control Publishing, uh, our our notes are there. You are welcome to download them. And for anyone who was curious, the Kubler-Ross book was On Death and Dying from 1969.
Right.
And Alex.
Oh, wait,
Hmm.
let me just add, go to Mind Control Publishing. It is the first article that's on the front page. Read the article. At the bottom is the download of this page, which is
PDF.
very thorough, and I give full credit first for to Chase sharing me with this, but second to Joe for actually compiling this together. And oh, subscribe. Yeah, subscribe while you're there. Alex, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, side note, I got interested in Chase Hughes exactly because I was reading one of your books, which actually began my interest in it. I believe it was Building It called Second Edition. That
Mm-hmm.
whole thing about Charles Manson at the beginning, that was Chase Hughes's work. You basically
Yeah,
copied it.
the guy's
Absolutely amazing read.
the guy's a genius.
And now to the present, yes, he is a genius. Inspirational. Now to the present, I was just thinking, I would say that if you wanted to get someone to go from one stage to the next stage, whatever that stage would be, I was just thinking you'd have to ask questions to draw them into that next stage. And I think the most basic question is, you look like you've got something else you want to tell me. Would you care to just share it with me while we're here, while we got the time? Because this is as good a time as any. You
Yeah.
just open up and let me know how you're feeling right now. And that seemed to me the best way to
Yeah.
transition from one phase to the other.
If you have the rapport to ask questions and start there with creating these states, that works. The point I'm making as well is that you don't have to ask questions. You can just talk about the feelings and talk about them enough so they have an association to them, and it's really effective. And again, you don't have to say you feel this. You can just say, you can actually talk about a third person who felt a sense of anger or was shocked by some reality, then another person who was enraged and angry, and then another person tried to get himself out of trouble by bargaining, and then your sibling who's incredibly depressed. You just walk them through by stories, and if it loosens up their suggestibility quite a bit. So very good point,
So
Alex.
using things like, oh, my friend Tracy, blah, blah, blah. You know, my ex was feeling exactly the same, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, is there anything else? Okay. Again, I did not promise this is going to be a long one, because I'm very impressed how easy it is to understand and easy to implement. I would love to hear your reports. You could either, of course, email them to me or go on Mind Control Publishing. There's a contact form, or when we get together next time, tell me what your experience is. And again, is there anything else, Joe?
I think that was a great overview. When Alex was talking, brought me back to our Ericksonian days. My friend John, how Milton would do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. I hope this has been interesting. This really got me down a rabbit hole when I first started thinking about it, and realized how fluidly you could use this. Graham, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. It's a very interesting concept to apply the 5 stages of grief outside of its normal context. But
Yeah.
would there be any situations where you'd be a bit hesitant, or wouldn't be a good idea to try and use it before we all go running around like crazed converts trying to use it on everybody? Any suggestions of how not where not to use it?
Well, I think first you have to have a minimum of rapport. That's the first thing. But also you have to keep in mind, what's your outcome that you want in this conversation? What's the state you want this person to be in at the level of acceptance? So it could be accepting the fact that they can just feel comfortable. It can accepting the fact that they have to step forward and do exactly what the job requires of them. So I can see it being weird if you don't know this person, but you could still do it. I can't personally think of a situation where it would be weird if you were weird. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Graham. Anyone else? All right. Okay, guys, thank you so much for bending your ear my direction and taking part in it. I would love to know your feedback. You have spent some time here. This will be available to download and watch on YouTube. So again, you took some time, you sacrificed your day or at least 25 minutes of your day, and because you're here, you're not somewhere else, and I deeply appreciate that. So thank you for your sacrifice. Gentlemen, ladies, everyone, thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was an interesting talk. Great, thanks.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Okay, bye everyone.
We will
Take
see
care, everyone. See you next time.
same bat time, same bat channel.
Yep.
Have a wonderful weekend.
As long as we're not on a tilted angle like the villains are in Batman.
Take care, everyone. So long.
Take care.